Thank you so much, sir. And now I request Shivaji Lingam to speak on behalf of people of Sri Lanka and Jaffna.
Thank you. Welcome you all. I am representing Elam Tamils. I am a former member of fighting Elam Tamils Hilton group. We gave up our struggle or arms, hand to arms after the Indo-Lanka Accord, 1987. Still, we are participating democratic politics, and we suffered, and we are very disappeared for the handing over the let down the armed struggle. Now 2000, after 2009, total armed struggle crushed by international various countries, 22 countries. In 1987, then Indian Prime Minister Honorable Rajiv Gandhi gave assurance, promises to our 6 armed group militant leaders and moderate political party leaders, Mr. Amarthalingam, Sivastambaram, and present leader Mr. Samanda, gave assurance Indo-Lanka Accord provide northeastern provinces Tamil speaking, linguistic and inhabitants of the region. Like that, you all are getting homeland. Please accept the Indo-Lanka Accord. Honorable Rajiv Gandhi asked to our leaders. They mentioned this accord, mentioned one clause. After 1 year, in Eastern Province, referendum. That referendum will decide Eastern Province people will merge Northern Province or they will stay separately. They pointed out. At that time, Honorable Rajiv Gandhi told our leaders, no, India never allowed to conduct a referendum. We will see. We will give a trump card to Honorable D.R. Jayawardena. Look, India made 17 years a referendum, that Eastern Province referendum not held. But 4 presidents, D.R. Jayawardena, Premadasa, Sandariga Bandaranaike, D.B. Vijayatunga, and Sandariga Bandaranaike. In 2006, JVP filed a case to the Supreme Court, demerge. Supreme Court Chief Justice Mr. Sarath N. Silva gave a judgment. At that time, Mr. Sarath N. Silva pointed out 42 Act number 42, Provincial Council Act, adjoining 2 or 3 provinces can merge with Parliament's simple majority. India didn't so far. From 2006, they forgot their promises. Still, they are separate North and East provinces. Now, last 5 years, no, in Sri Lanka, no provincial council system. Only their governors are running like that. Here, we can, how you can manage states without 5 years without election? Like that we are going. India must our homeland not indivisible, but temporary merger, they demerge. Now we are asking re-merger. And in Sri Lanka, we can't accept any political solution. Our self-determination, hold a referendum. India must help for that cause. And internationally, war crimes and genocide, international actions, India must support. And Indo-Lanka, Indo-Pacific region, India can't survive alone. That's why they have formed a Quad countries, Quad set up, USA, India, Japan and Australia. Like that we are asking, we are the buffer zone. We are supporting to the Indian national security. We don't want to go to China side. If we will live or die, we are ready. But India must, our former founder, first armed struggle, our former leader, Thangathurai, I am finishing 1 or 2 minutes. He killed in Velikada massacre 1983, genocidal attack. In High Court case, openly said, in Tamil we are prepared to Indian headed confederation. We are ready to. In 82, he said in High Court of Colombo, openly published by the newspapers. Like that, we are ready to cooperate. Anything. Otherwise, India, day by day, we are losing. India made concrete actions and immediate interim setup to stop the decolonization, colonization schemes. Hindu temples, more than 3,000 destroyed. More than 100 Christian temples, Christian churches demolished. We are losing. Like that, India must protect a setup, form a setup. Otherwise, we can't survive. Like that, India must bring this situation, understand, and they are all, Sri Lanka also friends. We are want Sinhalese. That can't help. Sri Lanka, they are traveling 2 boats, 1 foot in China boat, one in Indian boat. They are playing cleverly diplomatic game. That's why we are asking, expecting India to protect our people.
I find that all of you are students of higher education. So you may want to know exactly what exactly is our perception of the problem. So I made it a point to write something down. I hope you don't mind my reading it out. I thank the organizers for making it possible for all of us to be present here today. In explaining our perception of the problems involved vis-a-vis the northeastern Sri Lankan Tamil speaking people, I believe it needs to be looked at from 3 standpoints. One, from a geopolitical angle. 2, from the point of view of the northeastern Tamil speaking people, and the details of some of which was mentioned by Swamiji. 3, by considering the present position of the Indo-Sri Lankan Accord of 1987. Looking at the situation from a geopolitical angle, we find that there is a sort of a cold war, I don't have to tell you, prevailing now between India and China. How could the Tamil speaking people living close to South India help India strategically in this ambience of a cold war? It is our view that India should position itself firmly in the northeastern area of Sri Lanka by gaining a stronghold in economic, social, cultural and political fields. Indian government controlled investments in the northeast with the concurrence of the central government of Sri Lanka and the Tamil national leadership would guarantee security to the investments. Many an attempt at investment by a Tamil diaspora has been foiled by concerns regarding the possibility that the central government of Sri Lanka might label the investors as pro-tigers and curtail or freeze the investments at some stage. There are some accounts which has a large number of amount, TRO account is still is freezed, and that money is just, the government is using that and it has been frozen. So it can happen to anybody who comes and from the diaspora and investing. Sri Lanka wants investments to bring foreign exchange into the island, but would not like the Tamil-speaking areas to flourish or prosper. That is the secret of it. They would call everybody to bring the money in because they want the money to come in, but they don't want the Tamil areas to prosper. So that is the dilemma that we are faced with. One of the easier way to gain a foothold, these are our recommendations. One of the easier way to gain a foothold in the north would be by offering to desilt and rehabilitate the several tanks in the north. You know, the north doesn't have any rivers. We have quite a large chain of tanks, and these tanks, if desilted and made ready for tourists to come and be there, it would bring in foreign exchange. It can be also good for the fishermen, fresh fish fishermen to use it. Desilting and building the surrounding areas of selected large tanks to cater to tourists as well as freshwater fishermen would be beneficial to all. Building up solar panels in these expanses of water to generate electricity could be an option. I'm just giving you examples and for you to think over these things. And if you think over, these ideas could snowball and then find its way into the corridors of the parliamentarians here. I had earlier requested the Indian High Commissioner when I was Chief Minister of the Northern Province to build up the connecting marine road by the side of the sea on the eastern side between the north and the east along the eastern coast, facilitating communication between the Tamil-speaking north and east. I find that one of your articles does refer to this with regard to the connection between the north and east. I remember giving details of expenses involved at that time because the then High Commissioner wanted me to give the details of expenses, and I did give them. Though the then High Commissioner was in favor of that project, nothing came out of it. I have a feeling Sri Lankan government was not in favor of it. Rehabilitating, this is another recommendation, rehabilitating the Trikoneswaram temple in the Trincomalee district in the eastern province, akin to what was done in Tirkediswaran temple in the Mana district, is an ideal way to gain a strong presence in the Trincomalee district. Honorable Nirmala Sitharaman came over just 2 weeks ago, a week ago, referred to such a project when she was in Trincomalee recently. So we called upon her to ask the Indian government to take upon themselves this task of rebuilding the Tirukoneswaran temple, of which I am going to tell you a few more information. There are 3 layers in the Tirukoneswaram temple. The present site, an intermediary site below the present site, and the original site at the bottom of the sea under the intermediate site. So there are 3 layers. The present temple was built somewhere in the middle of the 20th century. The second layer were the remains of the temple that existed prior to the coming into being of the present temple. But the third layer, lying down under the sea, and the Sri Lankan government won't allow people to go there now, under the sea is the most important part of the original temple, which had stood at least from 2000 years ago. The Tirukoneswaram temple deity had been referred to in the Psalms of Nayanmars, who led the movement of Saiva devotion in South India several centuries ago. There is an important incident or an interesting incident to be related with regard to the original Shivalingam lying at the bottom of the sea. There was a man about town, a jet set person, you know, the person who runs around in modern cars with girls on either side, jet set person by name Mike Wilson in Colombo in the 1950s, who was the producer of the box office film called Ran Muthuduva in Technicolor. I think it was the first Technicolor film in Sri Lanka during that time. He, together with his 2 friends, John Plus and Arthur C. Clarke, you would have heard of the name Arthur C. Clarke, went diving in the sea of the Koneswaram temple in Trincomalee sometime around early 1960s. Mike Wilson had gone the furthest under sea and seen the original lingam and had felt something inexplicable. He came out of the water a changed man and very soon ended up as a Hindu Swami, a disciple of Yoga Swami of Jaffna. The transformation of the jet-set, happy-go-lucky Colombo resident was phenomenal. Now this is the truth, you could check up on this. India must reinstall the original lingam in a new rehabilitated Tirukoneswaram temple. It is not out of place to state that Mount Kailash in the Himalayas, Chidambaram temple in Tamil Nadu and Tirukoneswaram temple in Trincomalee are in a straight line longitudinally. All three temples are ancient Shiva temples. Greater collaboration in the fields of Tamil language and literature, Hindu religion and Indian culture, as stated by Swamiji, between northeastern Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu in India would bring India closer to the northeastern Tamil-speaking people. These are recommendations for closer collaboration between India and northeastern Tamil-speaking people, which could reduce considerably the influence China has gained slowly but steadily in the Tamil-speaking areas. Minister Douglas Devananda, who is one of the present ministers, has already signed recently an agreement with China for a project to be undertaken in the northern province of Sri Lanka. Whatever his perceptions are, the Tamils of the northeast have been consistently against the intrusion of China, Pakistan or any other inimical forces against India. But the Sinhala ethnocritic Sri Lanka has time and again showed itself as anti-India in the past several decades with a multitude of examples, and I don't have to go into examples, many of you would know. Coming on to the problems of the Tamil-speaking people in the northeast of Sri Lanka, firstly, we are not recognized by Sri Lanka government as a nation, though we have clear area of the residence from time immemorial, a language of our own and religions of our own different from that of the Sinhalese. This recognition is very important. The Tamil language had been spoken for over 3,000 years in Sri Lanka according to evidence unearthed recently, while the Sinhala language came into existence only around 1,400 years ago. Their first grammar book, Siddharth Sangarava, was only written in the 13th century AD, just about 700 years ago. The DNA tests have confirmed that the Sinhalese and the Tamils belong to the same category of humanity. There was some reference to the north and east being traditional living areas of the Tamils in the Indo-Lanka Accord of 1987. This must be recognized by the powers that be both in India and Sri Lanka. Unless we Tamils are recognized as a nation, the next step leading to confederation would be difficult. Confederation could be the only permanent solution to our ethnic problem. At the moment, not recognizing our right to self-determination, our lands are being grabbed both by government departments as well as the others from outside north and east, as stated by Swamiji. Grazing grounds are colonized by outsiders. Resources are expropriated by outsiders. The occupational military is engaging in restaurant businesses, tourism, cultivation and so on. They cultivate our people's lands and take the benefit or the income from them, and depriving the locals of their means of livelihood. Buddhist places of worship are being built forcibly in areas where there are no Buddhists. Though Hindus are not opposed to Buddhist philosophy and principles, the Sinhalese are using Buddhism as a weapon of aggression. This cannot be condoned. Hence, the recommendations, hence we feel a closer collaboration between India and northeastern Tamil-speaking people is an urgent need. And one of the things that I find is the northern part of India is hardly aware of what is taking place in Sri Lanka. I had occasion to speak to the Bar Association in Ahmedabad some time ago, I think under the chairmanship of a very senior lawyer, Mr. Soni, if I remember his name right. And after the lecture, many of them came and said, look, Mr. Vidyaswaran, we thought that there was a terrorist problem in Sri Lanka. We never knew that all these problems are there. In Sri Lanka, the Tamils were the victims of aggression and brutality and discrimination and deprivation, death, damage and the discrimination in that area, we were unable, we were unaware, they said. So that is one of the reasons why I would like to place before you the position of the Tamils in the northern eastern provinces. The recommendations earlier enumerated are therefore relevant to alleviate the present negative plight faced by the northeastern Tamil speaking people. Lastly, let me refer to the Indo-Sri Lankan Accord of 1987. The successive Sri Lankan governments have not held provincial council elections after 2018 until today. 5 years have passed. It appears that the present president has no idea of holding the provincial council elections. Now, provincial council elections was originally intended as some sort of a devolution to be given to the people of the north and east. But then Mr. J.R. Jayawardena, who was the president, did not want to show that he was giving anything to the Tamils, and he made provincial council system to be applicable to the entirety of Sri Lanka. So 9 provinces were given provincial councils. It is a white elephant as far as the 7 provinces in the south are concerned, but as far as we are concerned, it is recognition of the Tamils as indigenous people of the north and east, and that is being deprived now by not having the provincial council elections for the last 5 years. It appears that the present president has no idea of holding provincial council elections. I showed this and proved this in parliament just last week by saying that he is referring to money to be given to the northern province, and then he says it will be looked after and spent by the DCC, district, what is DCC? District Coordinating Committee. Why should the district coordinating committee do this? It should be the provincial council which should do that. Then he says the secretary of the provincial council, who is a Sinhalese who has been brought in there, has been tasked to spend the money in some other matter. So he is not thinking in terms of the existence of a provincial council in the near future in the north and east. Thus the 13th amendment has become a dead letter as far as we are concerned. Though the 13th amendment enacted under the unitary constitution is no solution at all to the problems of the northeastern speaking people, yet at least the implementation of the 13th amendment in its original form could clothe the people of the northeast with some amount of political power. There is discussion going on in government circles to bring in a new constitution. The idea seems to be to oust the jurisdiction that India has on account of the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, to interfere in favor of the Tamils, and having ousted India's presence after that, to foist an ethnocratic constitution prejudicial to the Tamil speaking in the long run. This must be foiled. I hope to understand what I am trying to say. The idea seems to be to promise the Tamils, we are going to bring you a very good new constitution, and then get rid of the present constitution and the 13th amendment with it, and the right of India to come and question with regard, because of the 13th amendment and Indo-Sri Lanka Accord. Later on, once the India's position in this is taken away, to go back and have amendments to the constitution and deprive us of whatever, even what little that we may have at the moment. So this must be foiled. Today the north and east are being governed by the centre with the help of the military under a unitary constitution. India therefore has a moral and legal responsibility to request the full implementation of the Indo-Sri Lankan Accord. The problems enumerated above and the recommendations suggested could be a starting point for our discussion, and therefore any questions would certainly be answered by us. Thank you very much.
Indian friends have came across that movie, the Ram Setu, the Hindi Bollywood movie, where 4-3 instances you can connect. The actor is saying that all Hindu evidence or the civilizational evidence have burned in Jaffna library, and Jaffna library have burned very intentionally in Sri Lanka, in Jaffna.
In 1981.
In 1981. Honorable Member of Parliament have also mentioned that there are 3 layers of temples, and 3rd layer you are not allowed to enter. Yes, there are many temples which is not allowed by the administration, you can go and access. So these are the very few popular culture, popular movies, and these things we North Indians, sir, we North Indian learn about what is happening and what has happened in Sri Lanka. So before the expert view from India, I request sir to speak 2-3 minutes about it.
Good afternoon, all of you. The land occupied details land encroached by the military in northern province. Kilinochi 4,378 acres, Jaffna 2,433 acres, Mullaitivu 1,578 acres, Vaunia 1,021 acres, Mannar 130 acres, and eastern province Batikalo 34.46 acres are full occupied army. Army at the full totally 9,500 acres. The land are private land. Military forces are occupied to these areas. The army divisions 571 brigade, 573 brigade, civil affairs, army forces, civil security division, 9th battalion, the Ola army and navy, air force, security civil security division, Ola the army forces are occupied the Tamil homeland areas and the private land, Tamil people are land. Then occupying missions conducted the north and east province by the Department of Archaeology. Archaeology the capture to the Tamil the Hindu temples, Kurundur Malai, Vedukanari Malai, Uruthurapuram, near Mullaitivu, etc. area, 71 places. Trincomalee, Batikalo, including 71 places. The Tamil temples are occupied to the Buddhist. Ola, the Wildlife Department, Forest Department, Maravali Authority, and Archaeology Department, Coastal Department. Any other departments are land occupied our area. Sinhala colonization, and Tamil areas. The land and Buddhism, very, very bad situation our area in this north and east.
Thank you, sir.
Before that, I just like to add a few things with regard to what she said. The army today, the military in Sri Lanka, the army has 331,000 soldiers, 14 in among all the countries of the world, and Britain has 90,000 soldiers. So you could understand how important militarization is for the Sri Lankan government, and why they are doing it we don't know, because there has been the end to the war. And why are the Sri Lankans every year after the end of the war increasing their the defense expenditure? Are they going to try fight with India? I don't know. You must find that out. You all are researchers, find it out. Whatever it is, there is increase in the defense expenditure in Sri Lanka from 2009 onwards. One more thing, here Sri mentioned with regard to the private lands which are being held by the army. There is 60,000 and over areas of state land which is being held by the army. And when this question was put to the president, he said, no, my information is 16,000, and he wanted various departments to give him a report. I asked about the report subsequently. No report was given. The 60,000 and over of state land is held by the army. Now the idea behind this, as far as the government is concerned, they feel if the government is a singular government, holding state land is their prerogative, they seem to feel. But state land also comes within the provincial administration, and it is mentioned in the law that any attempt to take provincial land, they must get the consent of the provincial council. So you could see without permission from the provincial council, without our being consulted, over 60,000 state land is being used by the military.
Every 5 civilian has 1 soldier in northern eastern Sri Lanka. That means that for 5 people there is 1 soldier guarding them. This has happened nowhere in the world, ever in the world, the first time. But one more thing I want to say is the Provincial Council and Canada, we had an accord. I mean, India and Sri Lanka had an accord signed in between them called Indo-Sri Lanka Accord. There are 2 main provisions. One is disarmament of the militants who were arming. The second is devolution of power, that is the Provincial Council. The first part of it is being completely completed, that is, there is no armed rebellion there. And the second part is nothing is being done. So basically, nothing being done, there is a law, but the law is in the paper, it's not being implemented. So what we are asking the Indian government is responsible for this Indo-Sri Lanka Accord. They did not include any Karen-speaking people or the parties included in that accord. So one is fulfilled. We are demanding or asking, requesting, begging that second part is being implemented. The only way the second part can be implemented in Sri Lanka is through not exactly military intervention, but the presence of military in Sri Lanka in person to forcing the government to implement the second clause of it. This way, India also can protect its southern border from the threat of China. That is with this I like to conclude.
Dr. Abhishek for giving this opportunity. Sharun Upadhyay also making this event. And we are delighted to have this is informal meeting of the School of International Studies. But on behalf of we are teaching and we are faculty and students of International Studies, School of International Studies. So I welcome you all to this school. This is one of the prestigious school, at least in Asia, I can say. One of the leading universities. Number of good scholars have been passed out from this university. They are in the Sri Lankan different establishments. They are in civil services. They are in the politics as well. I think last education minister also studied from there. So, but we are again we are very delighted to have honorable former chief minister and member of parliament to this delegation. This is a very rich civil societal delegation. I would say rich in the sense it's not just a track 2 dialogue. It's in fact track 1.5 dialogue, where we have the member of parliament and we have Swamiji with us, a former member of parliament. So, and the people from different part of the world, they are natives of this land, but they are now based in different part. The important thing is that after the deliberations from the Sri Lankan delegates, and they are the natives of that land, they are the sufferers of that what they are talking. They have the first hand experience that what they have witnessed for last 4, 5, 6 decades. I would say from just after the independence, the way they have been suffering and bringing and summarizing the things before the Indian society as well. So I really appreciate the way they have put it. I'm an academician, but of course 2, 3 very important submissions I would like to make before you, because the religion, particularly while you talk about religion, any religion, that this land is home to 4 major religions of the world: Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and moreover Buddhism have been considered at the in the sense of Buddha, Gautam Buddha, and that source of peace. But the way I studied about Buddhism and the Buddhists, the behavior in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, the 2 places that I do find that I think they are just using Buddhism as a tool or to consolidate their majoritarian discourse. That is one thing, that because religion, if you talk about religion as Mahatma Gandhi and others talk about, religion is a source of peace. Swamiji understand better. Religion is not a source of conflict, but what it has been projected before the community, that religion means the source of conflict. You keep religion out of the politics. But you can't, if you will keep the religions, but misinterpreting the religion, becoming a menace before the society. It has become dangerous day by day. So I think the basic argument of mine is that I think the religion should be taught in the proper context, and particularly while we are talking about the South Asian society, while we are talking about Hinduism, I think the religion should be taught. It is Hinduism, Bharat. We have been very tolerant. That Bharat means that we have been very observing, or we are accommodating everyone, and we are hearing whatever the pains of this land is there. That is Bharat, that is Hinduism, that is all I do find. So this is one thing that I had wanted to share about, that how the religion, the majoritarian discourse, that Srilanka Buddhist discourse, Balbodhi Sena, that the way they have created is basically misinterpreting the religious discourse for their political gain, and to control the power. This is one thing. Second thing I would like to put before you, the violence. We understand that there are two types of violence. One is the direct violence that the Sri Lankan faced for a number of years, and one is indirect violence, and that indirect violence is much older than the direct violence. I would say indirect violence is in the sense of structural violence, that the structural violence created between the two communities, that structure is in the sense of there are majoritarian Buddhist community, and they consolidated themselves along a particular ethnic discourse to do the violence against the minority communities of a particular land. So that indirect violence is more harmful, more dangerous to the societies, particularly while I'll talk about the minority community. So what the Sri Lankan ethnic conflict that I have seen, that Sri Lankan suppression, subjugations, persecutions of the country, the people have seen that this is a indirect form of violence, that the people have been suffering and basically facing these violence, the sense of ethnic violence, in the sense of cultural violence, or the whatever the way. In fact, I do find that South Asia, if you talk about today South Asia, but if you will talk about this Indian subcontinent, because South Asia is a comparatively new terminology. We are either known as Bharatvarsha or Indian subcontinent, or Jammu Diva, or whatever the names, Hind and Al-Hind, Hindustan, and all that. South Asia is a new terminology, and while we talk and we understand this region, sir, then we say that we are part of a common civilization. You cannot exclude, and the journey of these peoples are a civilizational state. And this civilizational state has become sovereign entity. Now, because of this sovereign entity, we divided the people. If you talk about Hindus, whatever that this subcontinent and Jammu Diva are living, they are one people. You divided in political entities. Now, Sri Lanka, in Hindus in Sri Lanka, Hindus in Bangladesh, Hindus in Pakistan, and there is no Hindus in Pakistan and Afghanistan, but there were. And there were Hindus in Bangladesh, but they have come 8%, and there were Hindus in Sri Lanka, and they are also going and persecuting and migrating, forcing them to migrate to other parts. So point is that this civilizational state to sovereign entity again has become a crime against humanity. That we divided in and we demarcated the people, that you are this and you are this, and this majoritarian, or you can say that this indirect form of structural violence is dominating, persecuting the minority peoples across the world, including Sri Lankan Tamils and the other parts. So my submission is this. And while we were decolonizing, So we were thinking that, oh yes, we will decolonize and we will democratize ours. And while you will democratize means democracy. What do you democracy? Democracy means that the addressing the issues of the most vulnerable sections of person of the society. But this democracy has again been misrepresented by the majority-minority discourse. That a majority is defining and designing the fate of the minority community. And this is happening in Sri Lanka again, that the majority community, and while you're talking about the democratic solutions and parliamentary solutions, you can't have it. Because the majority groups has majority in the parliament and they cannot give any verdict in the favor of the minority communities. So you have given in again the majority-minority interface due to the adopting a democratic setup in this subcontinent become a source of victimizing the minority community in this society. And what is happening further that you know, because of the number of factors that we are we are constructing the nationalistic constructs along the, you can say along the ethnic lines, religious lines, or linguistic lines, and that inclusive discourse has become the victim of the exclusive discourse. Like you impose the Sinhala would be the only language of Sri Lanka. So means what the non-Sinhala speaking people will go. What the Jinnah did in case of Pakistan, the Sri Lankan government did in case of Sri Lanka in 1956, and the Sinhala majoritarian nationalistic discourse has been imposed on the non-Sinhala speaking people in Sri Lanka. So my point is again that while you are looking these aspects of majority inclusive and exclusive discourse, majority-minority discourse, this is leading us, forcing us to develop one kind of relationship. That member of parliament and former CM and Sir has also pointed out that the relations between the two communities has become the relations between subordinate and subordinate. That one community has become superior, and because of the numerical strength, nothing else. And they are making the other communities subordinate, particularly the investment issue that I remember while the East Pakistan and there were West Pakistan. And the West Pakistanis, they were Punjabi Muhajir was controlling the discourse or polity of Pakistan, and most of the investments were taking place in the West Pakistan, and the earnings were generated from the East Pakistan, from selling fish or jutes and all that. And the same thing, while you talk about northeastern Sri Lanka, that the tea and rubber and coffee and all the earnings to the Sri Lanka was coming from the northeastern region, and investments were taking place in the other parts of the Sri Lanka. And that subordinate relations has further become a source of anguish or conflict between the Sri Lankan communities further. And that lastly, it is moving towards what I am drawing from the different deliberations. What is further drawing that now you started demanding for initially provincial autonomy and later a separate statehood. Because if you will not address and you will look democracy in the sense of majority and minority discourse, number one, or you will see that inclusive and exclusive discourse, then what you will do? You don't have any solution, because the parliament will not give you solution, being a majority community dominating the parliament. So you started asking for the separate statehood, and I think that was the major cause that the Sri Lankan Tamils had asked for the Tamil Ilam. And unless until this would not be understood in true sense, in the true principles of democracy or true sense what our civilization, our people have been understood, this problem will not be resolved. So I think we have to have an holistic understanding, human-centric approach of resolving these issues, and should be addressed by the international communities, particularly India being a leading power in the region should intervene and should resolve, have political solutions so the minority communities issues can be resolved. Otherwise, what would happen that the other forces, extra regional powers will play their game, and this is happening in Sri Lanka for last 2 decades. Yes, earlier the Americans were there, now the Chinese are there. So Chinese are there, now Chinese are balancing the cultivating one force, of course, to whom they will cultivate, and we have seen that how they cultivated Rajpaksa and majority discourse and to balance India, because India has been sympathetic and concerned about the minority community. But I would say one thing, in the last few days or few months, or I'm reading in the newspaper that India is more assertive, emphasizing more in the recent days about the minority issues in Sri Lanka, about the 13th Amendment in Sri Lanka, about the implementations of the Sri Lankan Accords of 1987. India has to be more firm, because we have been involving very constructively in Sri Lanka during the last crisis, economic crisis, during the infrastructural developments. You will see Jaffna to Colombo rail services that India had been constructed, that 62,000 houses India has been, and also developing and bringing number of projects. So my point is there, while you are developing the Sri Lankans, India should also, and while you are addressing the concerns, economic concerns and political concerns of Sri Lanka, India should attach the minority and the Tamilian issues with them, that we will bring the development, but you have to resolve, you have to implement the accord in the true sense that was supposed to be implemented 3 decades before. So thank you very much, and I think thank you for bringing such a wonderful delegations from, and I again welcome you in the School of International Studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So after sir's deliberation, I don't think there is much to say, but still we have expert on South Asia, Professor Saurabh Kumar, Dr. Amit Kumar, and the students, and our old friend and assistant professor in European Studies, Sakti Srichandan. Oh, Belan Swamiji, you remember the last time we both we met. So time to time I take insight from my colleague and friend Sakti Srichandan from the security studies, national security studies. Dr. Ankur Yadav is also here. So they are so after the search deliberation, now I am opening the floor for observation, for comments, and any questions if you have. So,
Thank you. Such a nice speech and observation. What I think now is Chinese entry into the politics of Sri Lanka, and the solution is something very. It's not only between Sinhalese and Tamil, but now because of Chinese presence, something has taken a very different turn. And India is, of course, was a big player, but now again it's a Colombo port city. Now Chinese Belt and Road projects, and so many humanitarian agencies. But the cause, what we all talking, that has went on the back burner. So what that my first question to you, that what you think of Chinese presence in Sri Lanka nowadays, and number two, how Rajpaksa government, that all they have taken the initiatives, pro-Chinese initiatives, and that is I think India has a limited role at this stage because of the Chinese presence. Number two. Number three, that even if India, what you said that in one of the observations that India, because of this all, we are not raising that questions on different stages, and India is not supporting that Hindu cause. So that even if we support, to which extent that is going to change some in reality in Sri Lankan politics. And number four, what you think at this stage, what the other countries from West and even in South Asia, India can do, because something is, as you are already saying that they are increasing the defense expenditure, okay. So I think that in keeping in mind in future that if some kind of resurgence of Tamil supporters group or something, so they are actually keeping themselves ready for if something like that occur in the future also. So how sir you think about this all issues?
You are asking this question from me, no?
No, yes, sir, of course. So
Okay.
you will have your obligations.
Firstly, we must remember the Sri Lankan government, successive governments are ethnocratic. You know, Professor Yiftachel of Israel did research into what is taking place in Sri Lanka and Israel. He's an Israeli citizen, and he came to the conclusion that both Israel and Sri Lanka are ethnocratic. Ethnocratic means that the government is geared to look after the interests of one racial group and for the benefit of that group, which means the government of that racial group, for the racial group, by the racial group. Now that is what is taking place in Sri Lanka. So when you ask about India's position, how it should be and all that, one must know exactly how they are behaving with regard to China and others. They trust China more than India. Not because India has any shortcomings, but because they feel the Tamils are closer to India by virtue of the fact that the same ethnic group is there in the south of India and the north of Sri Lanka. And therefore, the Sri Lankan government has been so far been able to deceive India, because whereas right throughout they are interested in Chinese help and to make whatever that they want from China, and China, as far as they are concerned, has been giving large amounts of money on loan. So therefore they are beholden to China also. So under these circumstances, there is deception being performed by Sri Lankan government vis-a-vis India. So now all your questions will be based on this deception. How will the Sri Lankan government deal with the situations that are coming up, and how should India deal with these situations? Depends on the realization of the Indian government of the inner workings of the mind of the Sri Lankan leaders or the singular leaders. Unless you understand that, you cannot give any answer to this question without properly giving an answer to this question. So now, will you now tell me exactly what these questions are in the light of what I have told you? Then I will answer them one by one. What was the first question?
That how, to which extent that you see India's role vis-a-vis China, that they are playing more active role in Sri Lankan
How
politics.
India can balance, how India
as
can balance China.
that port city they are
Yeah,
lobbying.
that is why, yes. Now, in the light of what I said, India could balance by taking an open stand with regard to North and East, because North and East happens to be a buffer between the Chinese oriented or Chinese more Chinese prone singular areas, and the Northeast, which is more closer to the Indian subcontinent. Therefore, it is necessary for India to show a greater amount of interest in the Northeast, to show a greater amount of interest in the Northeast, in the economic field, in the cultural field, in so many other ways by which India can help us. That's why I mentioned to you immediately what things could be done with regard to desilting of tanks and so on. Those were areas within which can be easily done, and presence of India in the northern and eastern province is absolutely essential. Now, the presence of India in those areas, the government may not like, because all the atrocities being done by the Sri Lankan government, Sri Lankan military, will come to light, and they may be able to bring these things out. So, therefore, this is going to be a problem. But on the basis that we are asking, lots of us who are representing our people are asking for help with regard to in the economic field. India could ask to what extent they could give help to the Sri Lankan government in the northern and eastern provinces. So the presence of India patently, ostensibly in those areas in various projects is a matter which will be very useful in dealing with the presence of China in the other areas. At the moment, India is not doing it. China has been able to get hold of the present minister, a Tamil minister, and there is a project that has been project that has been signed about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which is for the northern province, and that would make sure Chinese presence in those areas. And when you have underwater projects, please don't forget the area in India, Vijayanagarama, what is the place? There is a place starting with V. That is where your underground researches are done. Visakhapatnam. Now, when they start doing underground projects there, I mean, Visakhapatnam is going to be is going to be in difficulties, in some sort of a can be major threat to Visakhapatnam. So therefore, one has to be very careful in making sure these projects with Chinese interests are not taking place or should not be allowed to take place, because it would be detrimental to the interests of India. So that is the first one with regard to your matter, how to deal with it.
It was only observation and suggest.
I have different observation. I am taking different route actually, but it will serve coming count and blue count. Actually, elites are working very prominently in making a foreign policy of any small country surrounding, either it is Nepal, either it is Sri Lanka, or either it is markets. Here in Sri Lanka, there are two types of elites. Two types of elites. Elites. Tamil elites group, Singli elites groups. And of course, Singli elites group are more prominent and more influential. They are making government, they are influencing government. So, whether it is India-Sri Lanka relations or Sri Lanka-China relations, elites are working there. Elites work, Singli elites work is very important. They are influencing government, and Tamil are there, but they are not able to influence so much Sri Lankan government. And it is challenging task for government of India to influence, to manage Singli elites. Managing Singli elites will work in favor of Tamil as well as India and Hindu culture. So, if you have any options, suggestions, how India can manage Singli elites, the management is important.
What do you mean by elites?
And let me add,
You answer that.
that's a very good observation. Excellent observation that you have made. There are a couple of reasons for that. One is Sri Lanka is a government. Government can spend a lot of money doing the parties and providing them with every needs to the people who are actively in politics here, and engaging them is easy because they have an employed people. Yeah, we don't have a government and we don't have that much of resource.
Yeah.
So we couldn't engage. That is one of the reasons. The second reason, I'm going to be very honest with you, when the Indian Army, Indian and military intervention, not intervention, peacekeeping force came, the Indian government, then Indian government was totally misled by the ambassadors over there. Again, they were bought not by money, but by way of influence, and they misled the Indian government here and made the fight between the Tamil rebels and things. That has wounded a lot of Tamilians back in North and East. So those are the people who left the country and living in other areas. They have very much doubt even now, spending the money or time on India, thinking India will not help us. That's a negative thing. So that's the truth. But currently we are engaging in this thing and we are planning to change that thing. We are trying our best. People like me and people coming from Australia, Lango and Sundar, we are all diaspora people. So we are trying our best, which is very true. That we need to do that. We need to do that. Your observation is excellent and we are working on it.
So to answer to your question, like very briefly, my view or my answer, just come a minute. Yeah, I feel very much rightly you have observed and you have expressed your views where the India is struggling to manage the Sri Lankan singular government, and if India is applying little more pressure, then government is having a threat. I will go towards China. You know, that's the strategy they are playing, and when we meet Indian diplomats, also that's the ground reality situation.
No, India is able to manage the government nowadays. That is fine, but singly elites are managing the elites. Elites were always in foreign policy. So managing the singly elites is difficult, challenging task. How to manage singly elites? That is the problem.
Yeah, but again, even Indian Prime Minister has told the 13th Amendment has to be fully implemented, but nothing has happened. He has told twice, thrice publicly to the Sri Lankan leaders. So that shows that somehow the Sri Lankan government also is not willing to, listen to the Indian government in that perspective. Somehow the management is happening in different ways, developments and funds, etc. So in that perspective only, I feel from Elam channels, we feel that India should take up a strong standpoint with the Elam channels, and like I'm here for to promote a referendum where all the choices can be there in the referendum. But let the people decide whether unitary system or federal system or self-determination, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. So India, if it can take up that strong standpoint, then I feel the Sri Lankan government or the Sri Lankan singular Buddhist state will reduce all these their atrocities and all the things, and they will come to the line. That's our perception.
Adding to that just a little more. Adding to that, I would like to say that there is a moral obligation on the part of India, having signed the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, to be able to tell Sri Lanka, now for example, needs assessment with regard to the war-torn area in the north and east. We have been asking for that to be done, and it is still not being done. That is, the government does not want to have an assessment made of all the damages that have been done in the war-torn area, and wants to keep away from telling the truth of what is taking place. Now, there is a possibility that India, as a person who was as a party to the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, to ask for a needs assessment with regard to North and East. Now, needs assessment will bring out what exactly has taken place, how much of damages have been done to the area, and what amount of what has to be done with regard to the present situation. So there are ways by which India could deal with the elite, the single elite, in a more easier manner. According to the present international standards, certain things can be done. So you don't have to annoy anybody. It can be done in the best of international practices that are taking place. Thank you.
His statement was actually a little different. His statement is that single elite are being able to influence the Indian government so well. Why the Tamil elites are not doing it?
No, Sri Lankan war. First Sri Lankan war.
Sri Lankan war.
Anyway, you have answered.
In 2006, during the wartime, India did not take any proper actions. At that Gandharman protest from hunger strike, at that time I spoke to that meeting, hunger strike, participated present. At that time I am a member of parliament. Advaniji came and spoke to that occasion. And Maiko He is the co-organized that. At that same meeting, I said 5,000 crores Ambadota project, they are expecting sign an agreement with China. Please stop the agreement and India must take that Ambadota. They never take any action. Now 50,000 after that 2015, India and US government chase out Mahinda Rajapaksa, gave him good governance. Ranil Wickremesinghe Prime Minister, President Maithripala Sirisena. That government signed a 99 years back to Ambadota project. After that, Ambadota Port City, Colombo Port City. Like that going on, Sri Lankan government never accept any pressure to India. India must take firm action, like any action. Otherwise, during Indo-Lanka Accord also, they gave used 1 lakh of soldiers and threatened. They copied. After that, Indo-Lanka Accord first part, Sri Lankan Tamils devolution. Second part, India's security, defense. Sri Lanka can't build a Trincomalee, give a port to Trincomalee or Voice of America cover Chilo. Like that, chapter 2, they didn't forget. Now they are, China is like a cancer, India is struggling. India must take a firm action, otherwise India forget the Sri Lankan island. And after that, so many defense establishments established in southern India. Avadi factory and the rocket, Ola, not in other side. Now, Chinese or any elements, now they are coming back door. Fifth, they didn't enter front gate. They can't enter back door. Like that, India faces a critical situation. We are Sri Lanka Tamils, shoulder to shoulder, support India. Otherwise, that is our survival or Indian survival. If India accept or they didn't forget, we can't say anything. We are prepared to die. We are definitely our struggle is not finished. We will go on.
Thank you, sir. And program was scheduled till 5 only, and it's 5:10. This is the last with your permission. Shall I answer one question? You are asking question. Even I was expecting that you will answer, not you will ask question. Let it be. Let it be. So you are asking from, or you are asking to?
No, he's answering a question.
No, it's almost an answer.
Okay, you will answer.
Now, I recall the history. Emperor Asoka, if he hasn't sent his son and daughter to spread Buddhism in Sri Lanka, today the Sri Lankan Tamils won't be having this sort of problem from the Buddhists. So there is an obligation from India to look after the Sri Lankan Tamils, because their action only we are suffering. Second, the Sri Lankan, Indo-Sri Lankan Accord, which was signed in the interest of safeguarding the Sri Lankan Tamils, but not signed by the Sri Lankan Tamils. The Indian government has undertaken the responsibility and signed to safeguard the interest of Sri Lankan Tamils. So these are two obligations. That is, you have seen the problem, and the Sri Lankan Tamils are asking, please rescue us from the problem. Second, you have signed an accord to safeguard the Sri Lankan Tamils. So we are requesting again, please interfere and safeguard the interest of Sri Lankan Tamils. Thank you.
But nonetheless, I have the thing I wanted to ask always I try to. There is a curiosity in my mind whether there is difference between Indian Tamils in Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan Tamils, and whether Sri Lankan government treat these two categories of people differently. That has been because as far as my knowledge is concerned, I mean the kind of literature available in India. I mean I always find it. Sometimes they interchangeably use it. I mean there is no particular categorization and how Sri Lankan government is treating these two categories of people differently, or whether there is similarity. I always get confused. So if somebody
Answer that question. We are all Tamils, whether we live in North and East or Central province. That is the bottom line. The difference is that the North and Eastern Tamils have lived even before the Sinhalese came to the island. They were the original inhabitants. They were eventually pushed to the foreign country. The second thing is upcountry Tamils are brought in by the British, or rather not brought in, they were encouraged to come to the northern central province because the central part of Sri Lanka was fully forested. No human being can really go and do anything at that time. So they wanted to establish tea estate and a rubber estate, actually originally coffee estate. So they want to bring some laborers. So they encouraged the laborers, told all kinds of lies to them that they will be giving this and that, and they brought a large number of the population to the central province. And they toiled there. They cut the trees, people died of mosquito, malaria, and Bhatti University, the police from Manna, one corner, they made them walk about 200 miles to the central province. And they endured so much of trouble. And what they were given is a small 10 by 10 rooms to live in a family, in a row house. And they were given monthly stipend for food and other things. That condition is still existing. It is the fault of, I want to say openly, the government of India. They signed a pact then, and with the Sri Lankan government thought if these people remain after the independence, they will have a lot of MPs in the house and they can't pass laws. So they negotiated with the Sri Lankan the Indian government to expedite, or rather send the people out. So some form of negotiation, hundreds of thousands of, I have the statistics, but I don't have it in my mind.
1 million Tamils.
1 million.
Less than voting rights.
They were voting rights. If we had it is strength. Having said that, if we go into a current situation, different situation in Sri Lanka, if the Tamils were living in the northern central part of this island, there won't be a Hambantota. Because if the India controls the central part, Hambantota is like a throwing a marble into them and destroying them. It's so easy, so close by. So we lost all these things, and the Sri Lankan government signing the game from independence fooled everybody.
US and Australia, and thank you so much, sir, for your wisdom, for your words, and for your time. Without your support and without your presence, this program have never thought that it would be successful, because without your presence, I thank my colleagues, Dr. Srichandan, Dr. Kumar, Dr. Yadav, my friend, Dr. Abhi Kumar, and my students from South Asian Studies Center, Russian Studies Center, CPOD. So thank you everyone, thank you so much. We'll meet again.